The inky void of the galaxy stretched endlessly, broken only by the pale blue glow of plasma reactors humming from the Syndar space station. The massive metal structure drifted like a slumbering beast, its cold corridors patrolled by drones with red cameras glinting like the eyes of predators. The steady hum of machinery filled the air, creating an oppressive silence, as if the station were waiting for a single mistake to spring to life. Jace Korran leaned against a frigid steel wall, checking the plasma pistol in his hand. He adjusted the scope, its light reflecting in his sharp brown eyes. "Yo, Starbreaker, don't let me down now," he muttered into his comms, his voice laced with a smirk. His battered old ship, docked at Bay 9, answered with a feeble beep, as if it were just as tense as its owner. Jace wasn't the hero type, a warrior, sure, but one forged in the street fights of New Chicago and the perilous smuggling runs through contested space. Earth, or Death World as the Galactic Alliance called it, had taught him how to survive. Plasma storms, bio-hurricanes, and predatory beasts had made humans resilient, but also branded them barbarians in the eyes of alien species. Jace didn't care to prove them wrong. All he wanted was enough credits to keep Starbreaker flying and stay clear of trouble. But trouble, as usual, had a way of finding him. The mission was simple: deliver a shipment of tech components to an Alliance hub near the Syndar border. But as he passed this station, Starbreaker's sensors picked up a strange encrypted signal emanating from deep within its core. Jace had hacked into Syndar's comms system, a skill he'd picked up working for Earth's gangs, and caught a repeating phrase: "Special prisoner." No details, just those words, but a Death Worlder's gut instinct told him he couldn't ignore it. Just a quick stroll, he told himself, though he knew he was lying. The Syndar weren't your average space pirates. They were an alien military conglomerate with a fleet of warships and an army of AI-controlled robots. Infiltrating their station was like jumping into the jaws of a monster. But Jace Korran never learned to back down from a challenge. He moved swiftly through the corridors, his combat boots barely touching the metal floor, silent as a shadow. A patrol drone glided by, and Jace pressed himself into a dark corner, slowing his breath. The drone's camera swept past, missing him by a hair. He muttered an Earth curse under his breath, then continued toward the detention block. The security panel at the detention block's door flashed red. Jace pulled out a hacking device, a gadget he'd borrowed from a Corti engineer during a bet at Vidian Station. "Work, you piece of junk," he grumbled, plugging it into the panel. The screen flickered, numbers scrolling in a chaotic blur. 1 second, 2, then a soft beep, and the door hissed open. Jace stepped inside, plasma pistol raised. He didn't know what he'd find: a weapons cache, a Syndar secret, or just a trap. But as the dim ceiling lights cast their glow, he realized he'd stumbled into something far bigger than he'd expected. Deep within the Syndar space station's detention block, the air reeked of scorched metal and despair. Dim light from plasma panels on the ceiling flickered, casting patches of shadow and glow like the faltering pulse of a dying machine. At the room's center, Aeloria of Thalara hung suspended in a web of energy chains, blue electric tendrils gripping her wrists and ankles. Her shimmering blue skin, once a proud emblem of her Thalara heritage, was now marred with bruises and burns from relentless torture. Her tentacle-like hair, which usually flowed like the waves of her homeworld seas, drooped lifelessly like withered branches under a merciless sun. 5 days. 5 days trapped in this invisible cage, tormented by the Syndar's robotic jailers and their alien commander, Clythar, a Vorn with ghostly white eyes and a voice cold as ice.
"Speak, princess," Clythar's voice echoed from the corner, where he stood by a control panel, bristling with buttons and glowing screens. "The access code to Thalara's Etherium mines. One sentence and this pain ends." Aeloria lifted her head, her golden eyes blazing with defiance despite her exhausted body. "You'll never have Thalara," she said, her voice hoarse but sharp as a blade. "Even if I die here, my people will fight to their last breath." A jolt of agony surged through her as Clythar activated the torture device, sending a pulse of electricity through the energy chains. She clenched her teeth, refusing to let a single groan escape, though sweat rolled down her forehead, mingling with dried blood on her cheek. Clythar stepped closer, his white eyes scanning her like she was a commodity to be appraised. "Thalara is a jewel," he said, his tone flat, but dripping with contempt. "But without you, it's just a leaderless planet, ripe for the Syndar's taking. The Etherium will be ours, and you're only delaying the inevitable." Aeloria gave a bitter laugh, each breath a stab of pain. "You understand nothing of our spirit, Clythar. Thalara isn't just land or Etherium. It's our blood, our pride, the songs we sing in the face of darkness." She closed her eyes and visions of Thalara's deep blue oceans flooded her mind. Waves crashing against rocky shores, children laughing under the light of twin suns. That was why she held on, even as her body crumbled minute by minute. Clythar tilted his head, as if her resilience was a puzzle he couldn't solve. "I've broken stronger than you," he said, raising a new torture device, a rod pulsing with malevolent purple light. "Today, princess, you will fall." He stepped closer, the purple glow reflecting off her blue skin, highlighting her wounds like cracks in an ancient statue. At that moment, a sharp beep pierced the air from the metal door behind him. Clythar spun around, his wide eyes narrowing. The door hissed open, and a figure stepped in, plasma pistol raised. Light from the corridor glinted off weathered tactical armor, its blue and orange lines flickering faintly. The newcomer's face, a human's, emerged in the dim glow. Short auburn hair, sharp eyes, and a reckless grin, as if he'd just walked out of a high-stakes gamble. "Hey, sorry to crash the party," the man said, his voice low but laced with sarcasm. "But I think the princess here needs a ticket out of this lousy shindig." Aeloria stared at him, her breath catching for a moment. In the stranger's eyes, she saw a spark, not pity, but resolve, a burning fire she thought only belonged to Thalara. For the first time in 5 days, a faint ember of hope flickered in her heart. The detention block's door hung open, red alarm lights flashing like the pulse of a wounded beast. Jace Korran stood firm, plasma pistol raised, his reckless grin barely masking the tension in his sharp brown eyes. In front of him, Aeloria, the warrior of Thalara, had just been freed from her energy chains, collapsing to the metal floor with a ragged gasp. Her shimmering blue skin glinted under the dim light, but the bruises and burns across her body told a brutal story of 5 days of unrelenting torture. "Hey, princess, can you stand?" Jace asked, his voice low but laced with sarcasm to cut through the heavy air. He knelt, offering a hand to help her up, though his eyes stayed locked on the door, where the clanging footsteps of robotic guards drew closer. Aeloria pushed his hand away, rising on trembling legs. "I'm no princess," she said, her voice hoarse but sharp as ice, her golden eyes flashing with pride. "I am Aeloria, warrior of Thalara, and I don't need your pity." She snatched a jagged piece of metal from the floor, a shard from a broken torture device, and gripped it like a weapon. Jace smirked, unable to hide his admiration. "All right, warrior, but if you want to make it out alive, stick with me." He gestured toward the corridor, where the red lights now pulsed more frantically, accompanied by the wail of alarms. Without waiting for a reply, Jace bolted into the hallway, Aeloria close behind. The hum of patrol drones echoed from a distance, and a laser beam sliced through the air, grazing Jace's shoulder and leaving a scorch mark on his weathered tactical armor. "Damn it," he swore, rolling behind a metal crate and returning fire. Two plasma shots hit a drone's camera dead on, sending it crashing in a shower of sparks. Aeloria, though exhausted, moved with the precision of a trained warrior. She hurled the metal shard at another drone, knocking it off course and giving Jace an opening to blast it apart. "Not bad," he said, flashing a quick grin before pulling her along. "But next time, let me loan you a gun." "I don't need your gun," Aeloria shot back, though a fleeting glance betrayed her curiosity, tinged with suspicion. Who was this human, this Deathworlder daring to challenge the Syndar alone? They raced through the corridors, dodging squads of robotic guards swarming from every direction. Jace led the way, relying on his memory of the station's layout, which he'd hacked earlier. "Day 9, he said, his breath short. "Starbreakers waiting. If we're lucky, they haven't locked her down." The corridor opened into a vast docking bay where dozens of Syndar robots formed a blockade. At the center stood Clythar, the Vorn commander with ghostly wide eyes, clutching an energy rifle. "Human, you think you can steal the Syndar's property? She belongs to us." Jace pushed Aeloria behind him, raising his pistol. "Property? She's a warrior, not some trinket for you to trade." He winked at Aeloria, a bold move that made her pause. "Ready to run, warrior?" Before Clythar could respond, Jace yanked an EMP grenade from his belt. It detonated, unleashing an electromagnetic wave that paralyzed the nearby robots. Smoke and sparks erupted, giving Jace and Aeloria a chance to sprint through the chaotic ranks. They ran full tilt toward the docking bay, where Starbreaker, a battered ship covered in scratches but radiating stubborn resilience, waited. Jace leapt into the pilot seat, his hands flying across the control panel. Aeloria, despite her fatigue, clung to the co-pilot chair, her eyes scanning the screens. "You sure this thing can fly?" she asked, her voice edged with doubt as loose metal panels rattled ominously. "Starbreakers dragged me through hell and back," Jace replied, firing up the engines. Aurora filled the air, and the ship shuddered as it lifted off. But the bay doors began to close, the sliver of open space shrinking fast. "Damn it, they're locking the bay," Jace shouted, slamming a fist on the console. He turned to Aeloria, his eyes glinting with a crazy idea. "You know how to shoot?" Aeloria nodded, her golden eyes flaring with resolve. "Give me a gun, human, and I'll show you." Jace tossed her a pistol from a nearby compartment. "Hit the locking mechanism, that panel in the corner." He pointed to a blinking red control box. As he tilted the ship to dodge laser fire from the Syndar guards flooding the bay, Aeloria took aim. Her hands trembled from exhaustion, but steadied with focus. A burst of shots struck the panel, which exploded in a spray of sparks. The bay doors froze, revealing the vast expanse of space beyond. Jace shoved a throttle forward, and Starbreaker surged out, escaping the Syndar station just as a second EMP grenade from Jace rocked the bay behind them. They burst into open space, but the danger wasn't over. 3 Syndar pursuit ships appeared on the radar, their engines glowing in the dark. Jace veered Starbreaker into a nearby asteroid field, weaving through massive rocks with reckless precision. "Hold on tight, warrior," he said, his daring grin returning. "This ride's just getting started." Aeloria stared out the viewport, her breathing steadying. "Where are you taking me, human?" she asked, her voice still proud but now tinged with curiosity. "Thalara," Jace answered, eyes glued to the radar. "You need to get home, right? And I've got a hunch the Syndar are hiding something bigger. We're going to find out what." Aeloria fell silent, her gaze drifting to Jace. In that moment, she saw more than a reckless pilot. She saw a man carrying the fire of Earth, a flame that could pierce the galaxy's darkness. Though doubts lingered, she knew she owed him her life, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to save Thalara.
The Starbreaker glided through the void, distant stars twinkling through the cockpit's viewport, their light glinting off the ship's worn metal interior. The engines hummed steadily, punctuated by the occasional clank of aging parts, as if the ship were recounting its tales of perilous journeys. In the cramped cockpit, Jace Korran sat in the pilot's seat, one hand on the controls, the other tapping a rhythm on the console, a restless habit. His eyes scanned the radar, checking for Syndar pursuit ships. For now, the asteroid field behind them provided cover, but Jace knew the Syndar didn't give up easily. Aeloria sat in the co-pilot's seat, her slender but resilient frame leaning against the backrest. Her blue skin still bore the bruises of her ordeal, though she'd cleaned the dried blood from her face with the ship's medkit. Her tentacle-like hair, now tied back neatly, swayed slightly, as if reacting to the dry air in the cabin. Her golden eyes stared out the viewport into the endless dark, but her gaze was distant, lost in a place beyond reach. Jace glanced at her, breaking the silence. "Hey, warrior, you okay? You look like you're trying to remember the words to a song but forgot the tune." His voice was light, laced with his usual sarcasm, but a thread of genuine concern wove through it. Aeloria turned, her eyes narrowing. "I'm not your warrior human," she said, her tone still formal but less sharp than it had been on the Syndar station. "And I'm fine, just thinking about home." "Thalara, right? Heard it's a beautiful place. Blue oceans, twin suns, yeah? Kind of like an Earth beach, but without the man-eating sharks." Aeloria let out a soft laugh, a small but genuine sound, like waves lapping gently at the shore. "You know of Thalara?" she asked, curiosity flickering in her voice. "I thought humans only cared about things that, well, blow up." Jace smirked, pointing at the scratched-up console. "You see this ship? If I only cared about stuff that blows up, Starbreaker would have been scrap metal ages ago." He paused, studying her more closely. "Real talk, Aeloria. Why are the Syndar so hell-bent on grabbing you? You're a damn good fighter, sure, but they don't risk everything for someone who's just handy with a gun." Aeloria fell silent, her hands tightening in her lap. She took a deep breath, as if gathering strength to share a painful story. "I'm not just a warrior," she began, her voice slow, like waves washing over memories. "I am Aeloria, guardian of the Aetherium, the only energy source keeping Thalara alive. The Syndar want it to build weapons of destruction. They captured me to get the access code to the Aetherium mines, a secret only my family knows." Jace raised an eyebrow, his hand pausing its tapping on the console. "Aetherium? Sounds like something the Syndar would burn down the galaxy to get. But why didn't she crack? 5 days of torture and you didn't say a word." Aeloria turned away, her gaze drifting back to the stars. "Because if I speak, Thalara loses everything. Aetherium isn't just energy, it's the heart of our planet. It feeds the oceans, sustains life. If the Syndar take it, Thalara dies, and my people become slaves. I'd rather die than let them destroy my home." Jace looked at her, his usual smirk gone for the first time. He knew what it felt like to lose something vital. Earth, for all its death-world harshness, had once been a place of dreams, green fields, vibrant cities, before the Galactic Alliance branded humans as barbarians. "You're tougher than I thought," he said, his voice low. "But let me guess, you've got a plan, don't you? A warrior like you doesn't just sit around waiting for a rescue." Aeloria turned back, her golden eyes now blazing with resolve. "I must return to Thalara. The Syndar are preparing a fleet to attack my planet. They think I'm broken, but if I can warn my people and activate our defenses, we can hold them off." Her fists clenched, nails digging into her skin. "But I need allies. The Galactic Alliance doesn't believe Thalara can stand against the Syndar. They see us as a weak world,
full of nothing but oceans and songs. Jace laughed, but it wasn't mocking. Weak? You just shot a control panel to pieces while barely able to stand. And that alliance? They call Earth a junk heap too. But we've survived everything they've thrown at us. He leaned toward her, his eyes sparking with an idea. You need allies? You're looking at one right here. Aeolia's eyes widened in surprise. You? A human? Why risk your life for a world that's not yours? Jace shrugged, but his gaze was more serious than ever. I know what it's like to be underestimated. Earth never got respect from the Alliance, but we keep fighting. And if the Syndar get their hands on Ethereum, they won't stop at Thalara. Today it's your planet, tomorrow it could be mine. He paused, his voice softening. Besides, I can't let a warrior like you fight alone. That's not my style. Aeolia studied him, as if trying to read something in his brown eyes. She saw not just recklessness, but a rare sincerity, a fire she'd thought only belonged to her people. You're a strange one, Jace Korran, she said, the corner of her mouth twitching upward. But thank you. Jace nodded, his hand resuming its tapping on the console. Don't thank me yet. The road to Thalara's long, and the Syndar won't let us off easy. But this old girl, he patted the console, Starbreaker's been through worse. He turned to her, flashing a reckless grin. Ready to blow some stuff up, warrior? Aeolia didn't smile, but her eyes softened, as if some of the weight on her shoulders had lifted. I'm ready, human, she replied, her voice steadier. But if this ship breaks down halfway, I'll swim back to Thalara myself. Jace let out a booming laugh, the sound echoing in the tiny cockpit. Deal. Now get some rest. We've got a planet to save.
The Starbreaker eased into Thalara's low orbit, its engines humming weakly after a grueling journey through treacherous space. Through the cockpit's viewport, the planet gleamed like a blue sapphire, its vast oceans reflecting the golden light of twin suns. Massive coral islands rose from the seas, shimmering like natural cities, while swirling clouds painted ethereal patterns across the sky. But this beauty was marred by black smoke rising from multiple points on the surface, and red flashes of explosions pulsed like wounds on the planet's body. Aeloria stood at the viewport, her hands gripping the chair's armrests, her golden eyes wide with anguish. Thalara, she whispered, her voice trembling. Her blue skin seemed to pale, and her tentacle-like hair twitched inward, as if recoiling from the pain in her heart. They're still fighting. Jace Korran, in the pilot's seat, scanned the radar. Dozens of Syndar warships surrounded the main islands, while smaller signals, likely Thalara's defense ships, moved chaotically, struggling to repel the enemy. Damn, he muttered, tapping the console. The Syndar aren't messing around. You sure you want to dive into this firestorm? Aeloria turned, her eyes blazing with resolve. This is my home, Jace Korran. If I don't fight, who will? She stepped to the console, pointing to a large southern island. Virus Island, the heart of Thalara. If we land there, I can contact the Warrior Council and activate the Ethereum defenses. Jace smirked, his reckless grin returning. Hey, Warrior, you really don't know the meaning of fear, do you? All right, hold on, this descent's gonna be rough. And he pushed the throttle, and Starbreaker plunged into the atmosphere, the hull shuddering as friction ignited fiery streaks around it. As they neared Virus Island, the war's brutality came into focus. Towering coral fortresses, once symbols of Thalara's culture, stood cracked and scorched. Syndar warships, angular and gray, unleashed relentless barrages, hurling plasma orbs at settlements. Thalara's people, blue-skinned warriors with tentacle-like hair, fought fiercely. They manned energy cannons on coral mounds, firing brilliant blue beams, but the enemy's numbers were overwhelming. On a hill near the coast, a group of Thalara warriors held a makeshift fortress facing a Syndar robot army. A young female warrior, barely 16, drew an energy bow, downing a robot before a plasma orb exploded nearby, knocking her down. An older warrior rushed to shield her, but both were buried under another barrage. In the distance, Thalara's battle songs rose, mingling with explosions and cries of pain, a haunting, defiant anthem. Aeloria's fists clenched, her nails drawing blood. They're sacrificing everything, she said, her voice choked. Every warrior lost is a piece of Thalara gone. I have to stop this. Jace glanced at her,
Then at the war below, he'd seen conflict, Earth's battles against nature and the Galactic Alliance's disdain. But here, on Thalara, he felt something deeper. A people fighting not just to survive, but to protect their soul. "You're right," he said, his voice low. "We can't let them fight alone." Starbreaker touched down on a makeshift landing pad near Virus Island's central fortress, amid smoke and deafening blasts. As the hatch opened, hot air rushed in, carrying the scent of sea salt mixed with burning metal. Aeloria leapt out first, her tentacle-like hair flowing, her eyes scanning the scene like a warrior returning home. Jace followed, plasma pistol ready, his weathered tactical armor glinting under the twin suns. A group of Thalari warriors approached, led by a tall man with silver tentacle-like hair, his face scarred from countless battles. "Aeloria," he called, his voice a mix of shock and relief. "We thought you were lost." Aeloria stepped forward, her gaze steely, but her voice steady with the authority of a warrior battle-hardened. "I'd never abandon Thalara, General Kaelor, but our time is running out." She gestured to Jace, who stood beside her, pistol raised, his armor shimmering faintly under the twin suns. "This is Jace Korran, the human who freed me from Syndar captivity. He'll fight with us."
Kaelor eyed Jace, suspicion flickering in his gaze. "A Death Worlder? How can we trust someone from a barbaric planet?" Jace smirked, unfazed. "Hey, pal, I just pulled her out of a Syndar station with a dozen robots on my tail. If you want to keep this island, give me a shot." He winked, but his sharp brown eyes showed he wasn't joking. Aeloria placed a hand on Kaelor's shoulder, her voice low but persuasive. "Jace has proven his loyalty. The Syndar don't just want Aetherium, they aim to use Thalara as a launch pad to destroy other worlds. We need the Warrior Council. Now, summon them." Kaelor nodded slowly, still wary of Jace. "Very well, follow me." He led them through the fortress's gleaming coral corridors, where Thalara warriors rushed past, carrying weapons and medical supplies. Explosions outside echoed, shaking ancient reliefs depicting Thalara's past victories. In the council chamber, a circular room with a shimmering coral dome, Aeloria stood before 12 senior warriors, the last leaders of Thalara. Jace leaned against a wall, watching with a mix of curiosity and caution. Light from a small Aetherium orb on the ceiling cast dancing blue patterns across the warrior's blue skin. Aeloria took a deep breath, her voice rising like ocean waves, both powerful and pained. "The Syndar captured me because I'm the guardian of Aetherium. They tortured me for the code to the core, the only thing that can activate Thalara's shield. But in their prison, I uncovered a horrifying truth." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. "The Syndar have developed an Aetherium extraction device, not just to harvest energy, but to turn it into a superweapon. If they succeed, they could annihilate dozens of planets with a single shot, starting with Thalara and spreading across the galaxy." A murmur of fear rippled through the room. An elderly warrior with silver-streaked tentacle-like hair stood. "How could they do this? Aetherium is Thalara's soul. It can't be twisted like that." Aeloria's fist tightened, nails biting into her skin. "They've found a way to destabilize Aetherium's energy structure, turning it into an unstable reactor. If they activate the device at the planet's core, Thalara will explode, and the Syndar will harness that power to ravage other worlds." Jace stepped forward, his voice low but sharp, cutting through the tense silence. "Hey folks, I'm not from Thalara, but I know how dirty the Syndar play. On Earth, we've faced bastards who'd burn everything for power. If this weapon's real, it's not just Thalara at risk. Earth, the Galactic Alliance, everything's a target." Kaelor narrowed his eyes. "What do you propose, human? Flee and beg the Alliance for help?" Jace scoffed, his eyes glinting with a veteran's confidence. "Run? Not my style. I say we go guerrilla. Split our forces into small teams, hit Syndar outposts on the island to scatter their focus. Meanwhile, Aeloria and I head to the planet's core, where the Syndar stash their extraction device.
If we disable it and activate the shield, Thalara's safe. A young warrior, eyes full of doubt, spoke up. How can a human handle the Aetherium core? Even our engineers struggle to access it. Aeloria turned to Jace, her gaze surprised but trusting. Jace hacked Syndar's systems on their station. If anyone can do it, it's him. She faced the council, her voice ringing like a vow. We're not just fighting for Thalara, but for the galaxy. All lead the way to the core. Who's with us? The room fell silent. Then Kaelor stood, his energy sword glowing. I'll go. If I misjudge the human, I'll prove my loyalty at the core. Jace nodded, his reckless grin returning. Good. But fair warning, pal, the trip to the core won't be a picnic. The council swiftly assigned tasks. Thalara warriors formed guerrilla teams, preparing to strike Syndar checkpoints on Virus Island. Meanwhile, Aeloria, Jace, and Kaelor raced from the fortress, heading for a secret tunnel to the planet's core, the Syndar's military hub on Thalara. The air burned and explosions roared, but Aeloria and Jace's eyes met briefly, as if both knew this was their last chance to change fate. The tunnel stretched deep and dark, its walls lined with faintly glowing Aetherium crystals. Jace led, his fingers skimming a makeshift hacking device, scanning for Syndar traps. Aeloria followed, energy sword ready, with Kaelor at the rear, his eyes vigilant. As they descended, a metallic hiss echoed ahead, the sound of Syndar robot guards patrolling the core. Jace turned to Aeloria, his familiar wry grin flashing. Hey, warrior, ready to blow these suckers sky high? Aeloria nodded, her golden eyes burning, more than ever human.
The sky above Virus Island burned red with plasma explosions, black smoke swirling into the glow of twin suns sinking behind clouds. General Kaelor stood atop a high ridge, his energy sword blazing, directing Thalara's guerrilla teams against waves of Syndar robots and warships. The battle songs of Thalara, haunting, heroic melodies, still rose from scattered warrior groups, but with each passing minute their voices weakened, drowned by the screech of missiles and the grinding of metal. Near the coast, a guerrilla squad led by young warrior Lyrana took cover behind massive coral boulders. She raised her energy bow, her blue eyes fierce with resolve despite a face smeared with blood and ash. "Aim for the engines!" she shouted, signaling her team. A volley of blue beams shot out, downing 3 Syndar robots, but a plasma orb struck back, exploding amid their ranks. Lyrana cried out as a warrior beside her fell, incinerated in an instant. "Fall back," she ordered, but the whine of Syndar warships overhead sank her heart. The enemy was overwhelming. Hundreds of robots and landing craft flooded the island, while Thalara's people had only a few hundred fighters left. The songs faded, replaced by screams and blasts. A coral fortress on a nearby hill collapsed under a barrage, burying dozens of warriors in rubble. Kaelor cleaved a Syndar robot in two, but his eyes brimmed with pain as his forces crumbled. "Keep fighting!" he roared, his voice hoarse. "For Thalara!" Yet he knew they were losing. Each fallen warrior was an unhealing wound on the planet's soul. Their numbers were too few, their weapons too old, and hope was slipping away. A warrior ran up, his face pale. "General, they've breached the eastern defenses. Clythar's ships are landing more troops." Kaelor gripped his sword, his eyes flashing with despair. "Hold them a little longer," he said, his voice trembling. "Aeloria and the human, they must reach the core. We have to buy them time." But in his heart, he wondered if Thalara could survive this day. Beneath Virus Island, the secret tunnel to the planet's core was shrouded in darkness, lit only by Aetherium crystals along the walls, flickering like dying candles. Jace Korran led the way, his makeshift hacking device casting a faint green glow, scanning corners for traps. Aeloria followed, her energy sword humming softly, poised for any threat. Instead of Kaelor, a young Thalara warrior named Terran, chosen by Aeloria for her loyalty and combat skill,
brought up the rear, clutching a compact energy cannon, her eyes alert. Explosions from the surface echoed down the tunnel, shaking the tunnel and raining dust and coral fragments. Jace glanced back, his voice laced with sarcasm to ease the tension. "Hey, warrior, you sure this core is worth risking our necks for? I'm starting to miss Starbreaker's cozy cockpit." Aeloria didn't smile, but her golden eyes softened. "The Ethereum is Thalara's heart, Jace. If we don't protect it, every sacrifice up there is for nothing." She looked at Terran, her voice. "Thank you for coming, Terran. I know you could have stayed with your people." Terran nodded, her voice steady despite her youth. "Commander Aeloria, if the core falls, Thalara's finished. I'll guard you to the end." She glanced at Jace, curiosity flickering. Is he really trustworthy?" Jace smirked. "Just call me the crazy guy from Earth, kid, but I don't ditch my team." Suddenly, Jace's device beeped frantically. "Damn it!" he yelled, shoving Aeloria and Terran back as a barrage of laser bolts erupted from the wall. A Syndar trap, automated turrets hidden in the stone unleashed, turning the tunnel into a kill zone. Jace rolled, firing his plasma pistol, taking out a turret in a burst of sparks. Aeloria lunged, her sword slashing through another, its blue light illuminating her resolute face. Terran unleashed a volley from her cannon, disabling the rest. The tunnel fell silent, save for their ragged breathing. "The Syndar know we're coming," Aeloria said, her voice grim. "The core is just ahead, but there'll be more." Jace wiped sweat from his brow, his eyes sharp. "Good. I love a challenge." He pressed on, but the air grew heavier. Each step brought them closer to the core, and to whatever the Syndar had waiting. At last, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern, where the Ethereum core stood like a wonder. A massive blue energy orb hung suspended, pulsing faintly like a heart on the verge of failing. Around it, Syndar machines, metal constructs with cables burrowing into the orb, siphoned energy, emitting an ominous whine. A squad of robot guards, led by Clythar, the Syndar commander with ghostly white eyes, loomed like a specter of death. Aeloria gripped her sword, her eyes blazing with fury. "Clythar, he's here for the Ethereum." Jace raised his pistol, his reckless grin returning. "Hey, princess, I'll handle the robots. You and Terran take down White Eyes, yeah?" Terran nodded, her cannon primed. "He'll pay, Commander." On Virus Island, the guerrilla fight was collapsing. Lyrana, now alone, crouched behind a rock, her breaths ragged. Around her, her squad lay dead, blue blood soaking the sand. The battle songs were gone, replaced by the whine of Syndar ships and the march of robots. An explosion nearby threw her to the ground, and as she looked up, a Syndar robot towered over her, its gun barrel glowing. "Lyrana!" a voice shouted. A Thalara warrior dove, shoving her out of the line of fire, but he took the blast, collapsing with a cry. Lyrana screamed, but another barrage leveled the area, burying her and the robot in debris. Kalor stood on the ridge, watching his army dissolve. Only a few pockets of resistance remained, but Clythar's warships had landed more troops, overwhelming them. "Thalara," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I've failed you." He raised his sword, ready for a final stand, knowing only a miracle could save his world.
The Ethereum core's cavern glowed with flickering blue light, like the faltering pulse of a dying heart. A massive energy orb hung suspended in the air, casting faint rays drained by Syndar machines, metal constructs with cables burrowing deep into the core, sapping its life. The whine of machinery mingled with distant explosions from the surface, where Thalara's people fought in desperate defiance. Jace Korran, Aeloria, and Terran faced a phalanx of Syndar robots, led by Clythar, the Syndar commander with ghostly white eyes, his metallic face cold as death itself. On Virus Island above, the guerrilla war had nearly collapsed, leaving blue blood soaking the sands. But here, deep underground,
3 souls, a human from Earth, a Thalara warrior, and a young ally, stood as the planet's last hope. Aeloria stepped forward, her energy sword blazing like a blue flame, her golden eyes burning with fury and resolve. Her tentacle-like hair swayed faintly, as if sensing the Etherium core's weakening pulse. "Clythar," she growled, her voice echoing through the cavern. "You will not take the Etherium. Thalara will stand." Clythar tilted his head back, his laugh a chilling rasp, like metal grinding against metal, reverberating off the coral-encrusted walls. He pointed at the Etherium core, where the Syndar's machines blinked furiously. "You're too late, Aeloria. We're on the verge of unlocking it. The Etherium will belong to the Syndar, and this pathetic planet is just the first step in our galactic conquest." Aeloria's eyes widened, her hands trembling as she gripped her sword tighter. Her shimmering blue skin seemed to pale, as if horror were draining her life away. "Why?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "You should be fighting my people on the surface right now. Our guerrilla teams are striking across the island." Clythar stepped closer, his white eyes glinting with disdain. "You think those pathetic skirmishes, your laughable guerrilla attacks could distract me from my true goal?" He paused, his twisted smile widening on his metallic face. "I knew of your escape from the moment it happened, Aeloria, and your people, a ragtag bunch of defenders suddenly launching coordinated attacks? Did you think Clythar, conqueror of dozens of worlds, wouldn't see through your plan?" He gestured toward the cavern ceiling, as if peering through the stone to the battlefield above. "I let my superior forces, 10 times your numbers, crush those foolish rebellions. Your people are likely ground to dust by now." He turned to Jace, his eyes gleaming with amusement. "And you, human, have made this game all the more entertaining." Clythar raised a hand, his voice sharp as a blade. "Seize them." The Syndar robots, dozens of machines with glowing gun barrels, surged forward, their metallic steps clanging like a death knell. Terran raised her energy cannon, her eyes fierce with determination, though her young body trembled before the overwhelming odds. Aeloria stumbled back, her energy sword clattering to the coral floor with a sharp clang. She sank to her knees, hands covering her face, her tentacle-like hair drooping like broken cords. "It's pointless," she whispered, her voice shattered like waves dissolving on the shore. "My people's sacrifice, Lorana, Kalor, all for nothing. It's over." The cavern's air grew heavy, as if the Etherium core itself were mourning. Terran shouted, firing a burst of energy at the nearest robot, but a laser shot back, slamming her into the wall. She groaned, her cannon slipping from her hands. Clythar laughed louder, his gaze locked on Aeloria. "See, Thalara has fallen, and you, guardian of the Etherium, will watch it crumble." But then a figure stepped forward, blocking the core's faint light. Jace Korran stood over Aeloria, his battered tactical armor glinting under the blue glow. He knelt, placing a hand on her shoulder, his sharp brown eyes blazing with the unyielding fire of a death worlder born on Earth, the harshest planet in the galaxy. "Get up, Aeloria," he said, his voice low but powerful, ringing like a vow. "You're fighting to save your people. Don't let their sacrifices be in vain. You started this, and you'll finish it. The core's not unlocked yet. You still have a shot. I'll buy you time." Aeloria looked up, her golden eyes dazed, as if afraid to believe in hope. "Is it possible?" she whispered, her voice trembling. She glanced at the robots closing in, their gun barrels glowing, ready to fire. Jace flashed a reckless grin, his eyes alight with the madness of a man who'd faced death too many times. "Leave the tin cans to me, princess." He stood, pressing a button on the device strapped to his wrist, a gravity regulator he wore to adapt to low-gravity planets. The device beeped, then went dead, its screen flashing red. "Damn thing," he muttered, ripping it off and tossing it to the coral floor with a sharp clink.
A robot lunged, its gun blazing, but Jace smashed it with a single bare-fisted punch, crumpling its metal chest like a crushed soda can. The machine collapsed in a shower of sparks. Jace turned to Clythar, his grin wild and defiant, his eyes burning with the fire of Earth. "You planned for everything, Y-Eyes, but you forgot where I'm from. Earth, where gravity's 5 times normal. And now, I don't need to hold back." Jace became a storm. Freed from the gravity regulator's limits, his Death Worlder's strength unleashed, he tore into the robots like a predator. Each punch shattered metal, each kick sent machines crashing into the cavern walls, exploding in sparks and screeches. A robot fired a laser, but Jace dodged with impossible speed, then grabbed it, ripping it in half with his bare hands. The sound of tearing metal mixed with his wild laughter, a sound both crazed and unbreakable, as if Earth itself were defying the galaxy. Clythar's eyes widened, showing shock for the first time. "Impossible!" he roared, raising his energy rifle and firing at Jace. But Jace rolled, dodging the shot, then charged, grabbing Clythar by the throat and lifting him off the ground like a rag doll. "You like games, huh? Then have fun." He hurled Clythar into a Syndar machine, which exploded in a burst of sparks and smoke. Jace spun to Aeolia, his eyes fierce with resolve. "Move, princess. Your planet needs you." Aeolia rose, her tentacle-like hair flaring, her golden eyes reigniting with fire. She ran to the Ethereum core, placing her hands on its surface, feeling its faint pulse. She took a deep breath and began to sing, a soft but powerful melody, like waves crashing against the shore, carrying the ancient memories of Thalara. The sound echoed, resonating with the core, causing its blue light to flare brilliantly, flooding the cavern like a tidal wave of energy. The Syndar machines trembled, sparks flying as they were overwhelmed by the Ethereum's power. Taran, despite her wounds, crawled closer, her eyes gleaming with hope. "Commander, you did it," she whispered, her voice weak but proud. On Virus Island, the battlefield lay steeped in despair. General Kaelor stood amid the Revel, his energy sword trembling in his hand, as a squad of Syndar robots advanced. His guerrilla forces had crumbled, with only a handful of warriors left alive. Lorana, the young warrior who once led a squad, had fallen under a barrage, her blue blood mingling with the sea-soaked sand. Clythar's warships loomed overhead, raining relentless salvos. "Thalara," he whispered, bracing for death. He raised his sword, his scarred face etched with pain, but unwavering, ready for his final stand. Then a sound rose from the earth, Aeolia's song, soft yet powerful, like an anthem of the ocean. It wove through stone, soil, and sand, a summons from Thalara's soul. A blue light erupted from the ground, enveloping Kaelor in a shimmering energy armor, alive and pulsing like a shield. A plasma bolt from a robot streaked toward him, but the armor absorbed it, leaving him unscathed. Kaelor's eyes widened, a surge of power coursing through him, as if the Ethereum itself flowed in his veins. He raised a hand, and as if the ocean answered his will, a massive wave surged from the shore, towering dozens of meters high, sweeping away the robot squad. The sea roared, dragging them to the depths, leaving only shattered metal bobbing on the surface. Kaelor gripped his sword, his eyes blazing with hope. "Thalara has not fallen," he shouted, his voice thundering across the battlefield. Across Virus Island, the phenomenon spread. Aeolia's song grew louder, channeled through the Ethereum core to every corner of the planet. Thalara's survivors, hiding in the ruins, knelt and joined her song, their voices blending with hers, igniting glowing energy armor around each warrior. Those once despairing now rose, wielding their will to command the ocean, wind, and coral against the Syndar. A young warrior raised a hand, summoning a coral reef from the earth to impale a robot. Another called the wind, hurling a Syndar dropship into the sea. Robots were crushed, warships swallowed by waves, and the Syndar army began to unravel. On a hill, a group of civilians, old and young, men and women, sang Aeolia's anthem, their voices trembling but resolute. Ethereum light cloaked them, and they charged into battle wielding sticks, knives, and bare hands against robots.
An elderly woman with silver tentacle-like hair summoned a small wave to sweep away a robot, her eyes alight with faith. "For Lorana!" she cried, and her comrades echoed, dispatching enemies with newfound strength. In the cavern, Jace stood amid a wreckage of robots, his hand still gripping Clythar, the Syndar commander now weakened, his white eyes dim with horror. "You've lost," he said, his voice low and sharp. "Earth never bows, and neither does Thalara." He threw Clythar to the coral floor, sending him tumbling into a disabled Syndar machine. Aeolia finished her song, her voice soaring like a final wave crashing ashore. The Ethereum core erupted in light, activating a shield enveloping all of Thalara. A radiant blue energy dome shimmered across the sky, sparkling like an aurora, deflecting every Syndar barrage. Clythar's extraction devices exploded in a deafening roar, unable to withstand the awakened core's power. Aeolia turned to Jace, her golden eyes brimming with emotion. Gratitude, awe, and something deeper. "You were right, Jace Korran," she said, her voice trembling. "We did it." Jace smirked, wiping blood and machine oil from his hands, his reckless grin returning. "Hey, princess, told you. Beach party after this, right?" He glanced at Taran, who was staggering to her feet with a faint smile. "You're invited too, kid." Taran laughed, despite her pain. "Human, you're absolutely insane." On the surface, Kaelor stood amid the battlefield, gazing at the shimmering shield in the sky. He knelt, driving his sword into the sand, tears streaming down his scarred face. "Aloha, human, thank you," he whispered. Around him, Thalara's people sang a victory anthem, their voices mingling with the sea's rhythm, a vow that their planet would never fall.
The sky above Virus Island was no longer stained by black smoke or the red glow of plasma barrages. The Ethereum shield, shimmering like a blue aurora, enveloped Thalara, reflecting the golden light of twin suns. Beneath the dome, massive coral islands began to heal, reefs sparkling with renewed light, as if the Ethereum itself were mending the scars of war. The ocean, once reddened by the blue blood of Thalara's people, now ran clear, its waves lapping gently at the shore like a song of peace. Yet the marks of battle lingered. Shattered coral fortresses stood as solemn monuments, etched with the sacrifices of thousands. Thalara's people, though exhausted, began clearing the wreckage. Blood-soaked sand was washed clean, Syndar robot husks were dragged from the shores, and memorial songs rose, honoring those like Lorana, the young warrior fallen in the guerrilla fight. General Kaelor, his silver tentacle-like hair glinting and his scarred face resolute, led a group of warriors in raising coral pillars inscribed with the names of heroes. "We've lost much," he said, his voice low but firm, "but Thalara still stands." The Syndar fleet had retreated, leaving shattered warships drifting in orbit. Clythar, their commander, was imprisoned in a coral cell beneath the sea, awaiting trial by the Warrior Council. As night fell, Virus Island's main beach transformed into the heart of an unprecedented victory festival. Bioluminescent torches glowed with shimmering blue light, illuminating coral banquet tables. Thalara's people, warriors, elders, children, gathered, their voices blending in a new song, both mournful and hopeful, echoing across the ocean. Traditional dishes, seafood grilled on coral leaves, sweet Ethereum wine filled the air with aromas mingling with sea salt, creating a warmth amid the losses. At the beach's center, a coral stage rose, where Aeloria stood tall, her blue skin gleaming under the torchlight, her tentacle-like hair flowing in the breeze. She raised her energy sword, its blue glow illuminating her face. "People of Thalara," she called, her voice resounding like ocean waves. "We fought, we sacrificed, and we prevailed. The Syndar sought to steal our soul, but the Ethereum still burns, and our spirit will never break." The crowd roared, their song surging,
but Aeloria raised a hand for silence. She turned to Jace Korran, standing nearby, his battered tactical armor replaced by a simple shirt, though his reckless grin remained unchanged. "We didn't do this alone," Aeloria continued, her golden eyes locking onto him. "Jace Korran, human of Earth, fought beside us. He, a death worlder with strength beyond the stars, proved humanity is not just warriors, but allies, brothers." The crowd turned to Jace, their eyes wide with awe and respect. A Thalara child, her short tentacle-like hair bouncing, ran forward, placing a coral flower crown around his neck. Jace laughed, ruffling her hair. "Hey kid, watch it, or I'll tug those tentacles." The crowd burst into laughter, and the song rose again, now a new anthem, the Song of the Human, telling of the Earth warrior who shattered robots and never gave up. Kaelor approached, holding a glass of Ethereum wine, his eyes no longer wary, but filled with gratitude. "Jace Korran," he said, his voice deep and sincere, "I was wrong to call you a barbarian. You are Thalara's hero." He raised his glass, and the crowd followed, draining their drinks amid cheers. Jace raised his glass in return, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Hey folks, if this is how Thalara parties, I might stick around forever." He downed his drink, then leapt onto the stage, pulling Aeloria into a simple, energetic dance. The crowd clapped, singing louder, and the beach became a sea of light and sound. As the festival waned, Jace and Aeloria stood on a coral cliff overlooking the ocean, the shield's light reflecting on the waves like stars. The distant song from the beach lingered, but the air between them was quiet, tinged with melancholy. Aeloria turned to Jace, her golden eyes softer than ever. "You changed Thalara, Jace Korran, not just with your strength, but with your heart. You gave me faith when I had nothing left." Jace shrugged, his wry grin softened by a hint of sadness. "Hey, princess, you're not so bad yourself. First time I've seen someone sing a whole planet back to life." He paused, gazing at the ocean. "But I can't stay. Earth's calling, and this galaxy's full of messes that need a lunatic like me to sort out." Aeloria nodded, though her eyes flickered with pain. "I know, but Thalara will always be your home if you choose to return." She unclasped a small Ethereum crystal from her necklace, placing it in his hand. "Take this. Let it remind you of us." Jace closed his fingers around the crystal, its blue light pulsing faintly. "Thanks, Aeloria. And keep this planet safe, yeah? I don't want to come back just to kick Syndar butt again." He winked, but his voice carried a rare sincerity. They stood in silence for a moment, the waves and distant song filling the space between them. Then Jace turned and walked toward the Starbreaker, hastily repaired by Thalara's engineers. A crowd gathered near the landing pad, singing a farewell hymn, their voices echoing like a vow that his name would live on in Thalara's memory. A Starbreaker lifted off, piercing the shield. Jace glanced through the cockpit viewport, seeing Aeloria on the cliff, her tentacle-like hair flowing. He smiled, muttering, "See you around, princess." The ship soared into space, carrying the unyielding spirit of a death worlder and a piece of Thalara in his heart.